You're locked into 168 FM and are listening to, or watching if you're on YouTube, The Paula and Joe Show. Season 2, Episode 8. In case you're tuning in for the first time, here's a quick rundown of what you need to know. It's 24 minutes of raw business analysis and change talk, time-boxed, unedited riffing. And when the countdown timer buzzes, we are done. I'm Joe Newbert, and as always, I'm joined by my BAFF, Paula Bell. How's it, Paula? Would you please tell us what's up in this episode?
Hello, Joe. It's going well. It's a little bit chilly over here in Iowa, but it's going well. Hopefully you're doing well as well.
I'm feeling a little worn, actually. I think it's that time of year.
Oh, and then this is the perfect conversation for you today because we're going to be talking about beating burnout, which again is a perfect time of year because I think this is the time of year with the holidays coming and everything that people start to feel a little bit burnt out. So that's our topic for today.
Okay, yeah. And this theme of optimal self that we've got, I mean, to be it, we have to apply some pressure to ourselves, right? We need to be performing, setting high targets, exceeding expectations. But sometimes I guess we might push ourselves too far. We risk overstressing ourselves physically and emotionally. And as I said, I'm feeling quite worn. So who's joining us today, Paula, to talk to us about beating burnout?
Well, today we have Marjorie Daniel joining us. And Marjorie is a professionally certified coach that's accredited through the International Coaching Federation. She mentors on the ACC and PCC courses at UCT Center for Coaching. And the clients she currently serves are spread across the globe. She supports CTOs with burnout prevention. She also worked in corporate multinational companies for 10 years in the logistics, retail, and FMCG industries. She worked closely with people from across the African continent and traveled to many of the African countries to implement technical solutions that were developed with the support team across the world in places like Dubai, Dublin, and even New York. I had to mention New York because that's where I'm from. So even New York. And in 2018, she left corporate to start coaching full time. She took a year sabbatical and she traveled the world. She went to places like India, Sri Lanka, Peru, North America, to name a few. And it was the best gift she could ever have given herself. She's an avid lover of the ocean. She surfs, scuba dives, free dives, and swims as this brings her so much joy. She also loves trail running, hiking, and traveling. So you are definitely into fitness and you're definitely into doing things that give you joy. So welcome to our podcast/vlog, Marjorie Daniel.
Thank you so much, Paula and Joe.
And it's great. It's great to have you here. Thanks for joining us, Marjorie. Something that Paula didn't mention in your bio there, which I only spotted after you kindly agreed to come on this pod, but is that you're a BA for about 4 years, right? So you'll know the sense of business pressure and the stress of project work that we sort of face.
Absolutely. And I worked in the retail as well, which is incredibly stressful. Within a retail space, the advertising and marketing space within that, which is those areas are incredibly pressurized. So yes, I'm used to the very fast pace of pressurized environments.
Okay, awesome.
Well, this is the perfect person to have for this conversation because you understand being a BA and you understand burnout. So let's start with that. What is burnout and what are the warning signs of burnout?
Okay, I can just go into exactly, what the World Health Organization actually states burnout to be, which is quite concise. So it's a result from chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed. It's characterized by 3 dimensions, and that's feelings of energy depletion or exhaustion, increased mental distance from one's job, and lastly, feelings of negativity and cynicism related to one's job and reduced professional efficacy. So that's what burnout is. In terms of the warning signs of burnout, there are quite a few. I would say the first thing personally, I have experienced burning out I was a bit of a slow learner. It happened 3 times. But one of the things that happened every single time was people around me would start commenting on the amount of hours that I was working and my stress levels. So I'd say the very first thing is listen to the people around you that care about you, both colleagues, family, and friends. But other than that, the other warning signs to look out for is tiredness that does not necessarily go away once you've slept. So a persistent sense of tiredness, loss of enthusiasm for things that brought you joy before. So for me, I really love the ocean. And during those times, I would not go to the ocean at all. I wouldn't surf, I wouldn't scuba dive. So losing that sense of excitement about things that excited you fundamentally before, as well as work. If you were very passionate about your job and all of a sudden you're just feeling exhausted and you're not quite sure what you're doing there, and that's a very good sign. And also the reduced ability to produce the outputs that were previously really easy for you to do. So perhaps before you were a top performer and it was easy for you to get into flow and you produced a lot of work. Whereas when you hit burnout, all of a sudden that kind of output is no longer possible. I would also say anxiety and worrying. If you are waking up in the middle of the night, 2 a.m. thinking about work, the chances are big that you're heading into a situation with too much stress and not managing the stress that you're under at the moment. And then also sleeping problems. This is something I find in nearly every single one of my burnout clients have got issues around sleeping.
You know what I find interesting on something you said is loss of enthusiasm for those things that brought you joy. And the one thing we consistently hear is when you are stressed out, anxious, or whatnot, go do those things that give you peace, that give you comfort, that give you zen, right? And if you can't even do that, because those are the things that bring you joy, how on earth do you manage through that from a burnout perspective? Because it's almost like I now don't even have an outlet. I used to have an outlet, but nothing that was my outlet now is bringing me any source of joy, any sort of peace. So how do you get out of that and get back at least some of that joy so that you can decompress and de-stress?
That is such a good point, Paula. I think is exactly that. Is the core of it is not allowing ourselves to experience joy, feeling often guilty, um, because you feel that you're not performing. Perhaps that could be a sense of underperforming, or you're putting so much pressure on yourself to have a certain quality of output that you're in a way punishing yourself, I guess. By not allowing yourself to feel any joy, by cutting off activities that you really love. But yes, so how do we get back to that? Is the setting boundaries is the very first thing. Sometimes it can be really hard to do this, but there are ways that I normally work with clients in terms of that. I really get underneath what boundaries mean to people. So looking at your values and how your day-to-day life really comes into alignment with your values. Often I find with burnout clients that these two things are completely misaligned, not consciously, but unconsciously. Let me give you an example. Let's say a CEO of a company is really motivated by actually providing work for the people within their company, and they deeply care about having a sustainable future for that company and employing those people consistently within their company. However, setting the tone by themselves working an 80-hour week, are they not realizing that everyone else is looking up to them and thinking that this is the standard that they have to maintain to have the adequate amount of performance? And so that CEO's value might be caring for people, but in reality, what's happening is the people are following their example, and it has a huge impact. So I look at values, and values often help with setting boundaries. And then also something that is absolutely critical is looking at your support structure. And that's often the people that go hiking with you, or go surfing, or scuba diving, or walking, or swimming, or whatever it is. Going to the gym, it's always better to do exercise with someone else, or walking any kind of journey with someone else. And so I find this tends to be a big area, where even though the people do have support, they're not aware, they're not very aware of it, and there's also some kind of an emotional difficulty in asking for support. Sometimes they feel that it's not appropriate, or when they do ask for support, they ask for a lot of support from one person instead of spreading it out across the entire network of support. And then also, I'll just say two other things. The one is prioritizing exercise. It is so important to exercise. There's a caveat to this, is exercise can also be used to burn yourself out. I've seen many people who have used it as a way to punish themselves. I'm unfortunately one of them as well. So it can have another side to it. And lastly, I'd say letting go of that sense of perfectionism, which especially as a BA and when you're coding, there has to be a sense of perfectionism because the code requires it. So trying to let go of that absolute sense of perfectionism is something that will support many people with getting out the other side of burnout.
Yeah, perfectionist tendencies and procrastination, analysis paralysis, all of those words with BAs. You covered a lot in there, and I want to sort of go back maybe two or three places there when you were talking about losing interest in things, and the way you were describing it, I was being reminded of the sort of symptoms of depression, and I just wondered: is there a close relationship between depression and burnout? Because I wouldn't necessarily put those two together. Yeah.
Yeah, so I actually have a doctor client that I'm coaching at the moment, because the medical profession is just rife with burnout at the moment. And we were talking about exactly this topic today, is the likelihood of people being diagnosed with depression when what they actually struggling with is burnout. The symptoms are very similar. So if you look at energy depletion or exhaustion, mental distance from your job, negativity and cynicism, those are all indicators of depression. And wanting to sleep a lot, because people are actually tired. Those are all symptoms of depression. Yeah.
Well, that's what I was seeing. I was seeing this overlap and thinking, well, if you sort of cry for help, and it's sort of sometimes it might be difficult to determine which you have, and then you might be being treated with meds for something that's actually burnout, which is obviously not going to be very helpful. Okay, so that covers that. And you talked about support. Okay, so I feel like you touched on the answer to this question a little bit, but I want to ask it more explicitly. So you talked about listening to the people around you, right? And like they might be just letting you know that they're seeing a few little warning signs in you, and perhaps you need to take a look at yourself. And you talked about top performers and it being tough to admit that you're almost beaten. I guess it could be easy to see burnout as something that's beaten you if you're a top performer and you're taking pride. And it might be something that you push even harder with because you're trying to beat the burnout and you don't want the burnout to beat you. So it might be a bit like admitting defeat. Or for some other people, it might be that you feel that you're letting other people down. With the burnout, so I guess people are going to respond differently, but let's say other people haven't given you any indication or seen the warning signs in you. How do you tell people? I mean, what's the best way to actually say, I'm very sorry, I need to put the ball down, I need to step away from this because I actually can't carry on right now?
I have stepped away from many situations myself, recently and through the last year, because I realized that self-awareness is so incredibly important for people that have had burnout before, because you get into a little bit of a cycle. You just put too much hay on your fork. So knowing how much capacity you have, how much energy you have, is so important. And so how would you do that, and how would you approach that? Is I always go into, let's say, a group that I've created for a certain purpose, and then the group comes to a natural kind of conclusion, but people have a fear of letting go. For instance, I would then, say, we can stay in this group if you want to, but I'm going to be stepping out as the coordinator of this group, because I have other priorities at this point in time. So firstly, I would not actually apologize. I find this is something that we do when we have a lot on our plate. But I would actually just be very clear about the goals, the reasons. So when I go into new ventures, I'm very clear about what I want as the outcome, and I make sure that I communicate that explicitly right up front. And then once those outcomes have been concluded, I would then, in a really kind way, try and renegotiate, the ways of working. And if that doesn't fit in with the stage of life that I'm in at the moment, or the stage of business development, or whatever it might be at the moment, I would then exit that and just tell the people, okay, these were the objectives for setting up this specific group, and we've come to a kind of a natural conclusion of this. Normally people are aware of that in any way, and then just step out of that and say, okay, I will no longer be participating in this, but please do stay in touch on a one-on-one basis, or if they want to meet up ad hoc during the year. So I'd leave it open for whatever it is that I feel comfortable with, but I'd make sure to end the engagements that that are no longer suiting me. I hope that answers your question, Joe.
Well, I'm going to push you. I'm going to push the button a little bit more, actually. So let's take a scenario of somebody at work, right, in a corporate environment. They're in a department. There's 1,000 projects like running around the building. There are teams of people working together. There's deliverables and solutions to produce, and you're a part of that. So you almost can't negotiate in quite the same way that you were just describing and say, I'm just going to step back from this project for a little while, if you don't mind. You sort of have to probably be a little bit more upfront and say, I'm not coping. That's probably the conversation. You're probably having that conversation with your boss, or you might be confiding in somebody close to you. But in a sort of typical corporate work environment, how can I let people know that the insane pressure and the burning fires and all of that sort of merry-go-round that we're on is just becoming overwhelming?
So I'll be very direct with you in how I coach people that are in exactly that position. So what tends to happen is people are in what they call a drama triangle. Okay. The drama triangle consists of 3 role players: the victim, the persecutor, and the rescuer. And often the person that is struggling with burnout, they're the rescuer. They're rescuing the situation, often the project.
Yeah.
And what they're doing is they're overextending themselves. But what happens is they step into, they start exhibiting victim behavior, because now they don't have any time with their family. They're basically offering, especially if they're single, they're offering up their social lives. If they're married, they're offering up a lot of the time that they have with their families. So really what's happening is they're going round and round in the drama triangle, and this is exhausting. And once they know which role player they're playing within this drama triangle, they can use the language of this to then communicate to their colleagues, their boss, and so forth, to say, what, this is what's happening as a result of this project. These are the consequences that are happening in my life. And it's not feasible in the long term for me to continue working like this. Will there be a deadline? It's not feasible to do 80 hours a week of work. And when there's the hours that are required that need to be put in, requires another resource, that request should be given sooner rather than later. Because what I've realized is many people will do the job of 3 people. And then the person resigns because they're burnt out. They say, I can't do this anymore, I leave. And then they employ 4 other people to do their job.
True
But
story.
they don't speak up early enough. And those that I have caught that speak up early enough, we normally improve their communication skills, make them very aware of where they are within this triangle that's causing a lot of energy drain from them. And then learning how to really communicate courageously with the people around them about their own needs. I need support. I need another person for this. It might not happen immediately, but it will probably happen within 3 months if you're very balanced in the way that you're delivering this message and you're doing it to the right people, not only the people that you think have authority over you, but to all people that have authority within the organization. So people do not want to lose good resources, and they often do because the resource doesn't communicate.
Spot on.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I mean, I've seen people in that position where they actually have spoken up and said, "Look, this is too much work. You got me doing the work of 3 people." But this is the thing, they keep doing the work. So I'm like, "Stop actually doing the work, because the more you do it, it just shows them you can do it." So you're actually enabling the behavior of having to do that work all the time, right? And people don't ever want to say no, but no, that 2 letters, that's very powerful, to say no. But as we talk about the burnout, and you've given us so much great information on the signs, what it is, how do you engage support when needed, how do we recalibrate ourselves after burnout? So we've gotten the support we needed. We're moving past the burnout. We figured out, we've done our self-introspection and self-reflection, and now we're ready to continue on. We've got that energy back. How do we recalibrate ourselves after going through that phase of burnout?
So, I would say the most important thing is not to lose sight of sustainable long-term performance. This is a marathon. It is not a sprint. Unless you want to only have a 2-year career. This is a long-term game. And so I like to use the analogy of a backpack, just saying, okay, so you've got a backpack on and we're going on this big adventure. There's a lot of change and we don't know where the destination is. We don't know who'll join us on it. How heavy is that backpack? Is there some of it you can put down? Maybe just take it off and pack it out, and let's analyze what you've got in there. And using the 80-20 principle, just the Pareto principle, saying maybe 80% of it you don't need right now. And what are the things that are absolutely essential for you to be able to move forward? And, if you think about traveling, you need a phone, so we need to be able to communicate. We need to be able to have connection with other people. We need nutrition and food. We need the appropriate clothes. So, the good shoes and the basic things. Exercise, So those, and it really, with burnout, it comes down to the basics. Sleeping. What are you sleeping? Okay. How's your nutrition? All of those things. So I would say to recalibrate and make sure that they don't get into the burnout cycle or continue with the burnout cycle. It's be aware of what's in your backpack and what you're choosing to take on this journey with you.
Yeah, it reminds me, it's a similar concept, sort of if you get retrenched or lose your job in some way. Obviously, you've got a number of household expenses, and the idea is to actually drop down to the bare minimums. So you don't do a gradual, let's unpack, you just cancel everything you can cancel so that you can last as long as possible. And here it's the same principle, right? You just need to be minimalist on this, get it down to the bare minimum of what the things that you need to carry, and then slowly build up and put a few more things in your backpack as you get stronger again. I think that's very very handy advice. I don't know if you hear the buzzer, unfortunately.
And
It does this every time. It is just how it is. But
But
yeah,
Joe, can I break something really, really quick? I know we're at
go for
24,
it.
but I have to
No, go
say
for
this.
it.
I just have to say this. I don't know if you are familiar with Erykah Badu. And
no,
when you started talking about, okay, so she's a R&B singer, and she
yeah.
has a song called Bag Lady. And
Mhm.
the verse of the song that I think is so vital to what you just said, it says, "Bag lady, you're going to hurt your back, dragging all them bags like that. I guess nobody ever told you all you must hold on to is you, is you, is you." And then she goes into the story of how you need to pack light. And that song has been a song forever. And it just resonated. It came to me when you said that with the backpack. That is exactly what her song is talking about. We need to stop carrying all of this baggage and make it lighter so we can actually do the things that we need to do. So I know we were at the 24 minutes, but I
Yeah.
just had to put that in there.
No, that's amazing. How serendipitous that song and the advice. Yeah, fantastic.
I love
Yes.
it. Thank you, Paula.
You're
Yeah.
welcome.
Yeah. Right, we're going to get your social details in a moment, Marjorie, but I know you sort of got a couple of, you've got actually a long list of books. I'm happy to drop them all into the show notes so that people can get links and click through and see if there's any that they think they want to read. So you're welcome to tell us all seven, or you can just pick a couple out for us now of which ones you think are going to be most relevant based on the conversation that we've had. Do you want me to
So,
remind you of them?
yes, yes,
Okay.
please.
I can I can do that. I'll just run through the seven quickly, and then you can tell us a little bit more about which ones mean. So there was peak performance, stealing fire, the myth of normal, scattered minds, essential spirituality, step by step self compassion, and TED Talk fear setting.
Okay, so I'd say fear setting, the TED Talk is absolutely critical. It's really, really helpful. The Myth of Normal, I'm actually busy reading at the moment with Gabor Maté. That's an incredible book. And for all the BAs that are listening, you might really enjoy Scattered Minds, which is an incredible book about ADHD and the potential healing for that. And I think it comes a lot out in Burnout as well.
Okay. Interesting. Right. Yeah, we will put all of that in the show notes. Yeah, so that people can click through. Paula, over to you.
Well, thank you once again, the phenomenal Marjorie Daniel. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You gave us so much great information from the definition of burnout, and how it's an energy depleter, and how you have that mental distance and negative feelings, to some of the signs of tiredness, anxiety, losing enthusiasm. I'm not going to forget that, losing enthusiasm for the things that you once loved. You just don't have that. How it's important to set boundaries unapologetically. Don't apologize for them. And having that support structure, but also taking care of the body. And we've had a conversation about that. Joe is into exercise. I'm a group fitness instructor as well. So I love that, bringing that up, and how depression and burnout symptoms can be so intertwined, and they can be so cohesive that sometimes you don't even realize it. But thank you so much for all of those gems. We appreciate it. And for people who want to connect with you, find out more, continue this conversation with you, where can they find you to stay connected?
So I've got so my website is www.toolsfortrailblazers. Actually, that's a Facebook page that I'm quite active on. That there's a community where I post lots of my complimentary masterclasses and so forth on. My email address is Marjorie at Marjorie Daniel. That's Majorie, and Daniel, which is Daniel.co.za. On LinkedIn, you can find me at Innovative Marjorie Daniel. And on Instagram, I'm on Marjorie underscore Daniel underscore. And I'd be happy to chat to anyone who wants to reach out. Just send me a message.
Fantastic. Yeah, I'm sure people will be keen to get in touch. But thanks for joining us on the pod, Marjorie. We really do appreciate it. And thank you for tuning in. We appreciate your support too. You can subscribe to the Paula and Joe Show on your pod player of choice, be it iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, Amazon Music and more. If you enjoy the show, then please help pass the pod by leaving a 5-star rating. And that's not a vanity request. It helps put the podcast in front of people just like you. You can follow at 168FM on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. And of course you can keep the riff going too by leaving your comments over on the blog at 168.fm. That's the words 16 and 8, not the numbers. We'd love to hear your take on keeping burnout at bay. Marjorie, Paula and I will join you there. Until then, take care and keep growing.